Welcome to another OCD Recovery Instagram Live. I'm going to be covering questions and answers that you want to ask me in relation to OCD. So if you just put in the bottom of the comments here your questions that you want to ask me in relation to OCD, I will cover those now. I'll talk a little bit about the post that we put up yesterday in relation to acceptance. There's a lot of misconceptions around what acceptance is, and so that's a great post to look at because Momin and Kirsty from the YouTube channel put that together with lots of points in relation to what exactly is involved in acceptance, so we understand what that sort of internal feeling is, that sort of internal surrender where we don't have to agree with something, we don't have to like something, it doesn't change something about ourselves, but we're able to make peace with whatever external thing, whatever life situation, or whatever internal thing. So we can accept regardless of whatever it is, whatever the situation is, and make peace with that. Like, the problem with acceptance, people tend to get it confused with agreement, so they think it means something. It means like, I like that, or I want that to happen. That's not the case. If I had a disease, for example, I wouldn't like having disease, but not accepting it wouldn't be acknowledging reality. It wouldn't be making peace with what reality is. Reality would be the fact that I have a disease, and so I would just need to acknowledge that. And at first I might reject it internally. I don't want that. I can't even believe this is happening. This is terrible, and so on. And that catastrophizing that's happening there leads to the chronic anxiety cycle and me trying to internally repel it, where in reality it's about accepting it and making peace with it being there, not trying to force it away, not trying to push it away, not trying to reject it as a fact that isn't reality when it is. All those kinds of things are the opposite of acceptance. Now, acceptance is an internal sort of surrendering to acknowledging what is there, what is reality, or accepting uncertainty, accepting I am uncertain about the universe, making peace with that. If I didn't accept that, I could be very anxious about uncertainty itself, but that is a little bit trickier when it comes to uncertainty, because often if we have a core fear that's lying in the background there, maybe fear of dying or fear of getting ill or fear of any of these things, that can be sort of pulling along, and so we need to work on accepting, not agreeing with that fear, that core fear there, whatever it may be, accepting death, accepting a disease, accepting one of those kinds of things. So that post done by Momin and Kirsty goes into great detail about that, of all the specific points. You don't lose who you are. It's not making you become someone else. Any of that stuff, which are common myths you often see. And I see them on social media all the time. People getting acceptance wrong, and then I was trying to accept something that I didn't agree with. No, you can choose to disagree with something. You can choose to disagree with something, but you can accept it. So I would not like to go to prison. I disagree with me going to prison. I really don't want it. But if I went to prison, I could accept it. I really don't want cancer, but I could accept it if I had it. It might be very difficult. Might have to practice going through it. But it's a common one. People go, I've read this Stubbornly Refused book, and I don't believe you can stubbornly refuse to make yourself miserable about anything. I reject that. I reject that idea. I need to feel some miserable, otherwise I lose my feelings. Acceptance doesn't mean you lose feelings. If anything, well, actually, yes, it makes you feel more, you feel more deeply, you feel more connected to things, because it gets rid of so many layers of that discomfort that you get from the internal rejection. So it makes you closer, makes you more empathetic, makes you more creative, because you've got that freedom, that inner freedom to be and do how you want, not in terms of doing things against your values and so on, but in the sense of you feel that freedom because it's not locked on in the background so much. Now, what was I going to talk about? I wanted to talk first about acceptance. Very key when it comes to acceptance is the realization that you can't force it. We all hear acceptance in all different books in relation to anxiety, and we think, I've got to accept it. How do I accept it? What do I force to do it? Give me a blueprint on acceptance so I can get it right in my head, so I can just do it like that. No, you can't just do it like that. If it was the case, that's what we all think. And then what if I can never accept? What if I stay anxious forever because I can't accept? And so on and so on and so on and so on. That's the path that we go down. when we are trying to force acceptance, trying to internalize it quickly to sort of get it done, so to speak, because we want to get OCD pushed into the background and onto the next thing. You can't really do that with internal sensations, because it's like sort of getting a pool of muddy water and getting a stick and trying to stir it up to get it clear instantly and quickly. Okay. Nick, you're in the comments here. If you are free and you would like to come on this Instagram live, just send a request and I will add you now. Nick, if you want to come on here now and do an Instagram live, and then I'll bring you on here now and we can carry on talking about things on this call. If you're not free, I'll just carry on as I am. I just thought that might be a good idea. So in relation to your questions, how does acceptance work towards something where it's a relation to, here we go, let me just add Nick. Just adding Nick now.
What's
Nick,
up, my friend?
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. I'm just putting your shirt on.
Perfect. Okay, Nick, one thing I was going to say to you is just make sure the sound on your end is okay, so we don't get that sort of feedback.
I turned
the
the volume down halfway. That should work.
Perfect. Great. So first of all, I'll cover about harm OCD. What happens with harm OCD is we get into a position whereby we think, how can I accept if I harmed? Like we think, oh, harming, that's so wrong, it makes me a bad person. So if I harm, that would be terrible. I've got to reject that, because if I accepted it, then that means that I'm more likely to do it. That's another common myth with harm-related OCD. If I accept it, it's more likely to do it. Or like one relating to maybe having an accident or jumping off a cliff. If I accept that, then maybe I'm going to jump off a cliff right now. So that sort of feeling like, oh my God, I'm getting too close to it and in a dangerous position. Whereas actually harm is about acknowledging and that we can make mistakes, and these things can occur and these things can happen, and that humans aren't good or bad, as the teachings of Albert Ellis in the book The Myth of Self-Esteem. There's no good human or bad human. The self is a complex, ever-changing process that can't be rated as just one thing, as good or bad, and that's a key part. So we have to delve into that. And with harm OCD, it's about looking at being fallible, mistake making, having reasons why people acted like that, and it doesn't detract from the human's value. The human's value is on being alive and human. It's not determined by one behavior or thing that's happened. So I would definitely suggest the first book on our reading list, How to Stubbornly Refuse to Make Yourself Miserable About Anything, and the other book, The Myth of Self-Esteem. Now, Nick, can you highlight how important the reading of those books are? Because you've done quite a lot of videos on our channel about the reading. Could you just highlight a bit about that?
Absolutely. So I actually just did a video an hour ago on the first exercise from the first book that I sent to Moment. So I think you highlighted a really good point. When we're talking to people, the reading list, the reason why the reading list is so important, as we know, is it helps lay down the foundation for understanding unconditional self-life and other acceptance. And then people ask me, well, why is Albert Ellis's books the first books on the reading list? Well, because with Paul David's book, with Claire Weeks' book.
Yes, Rania, you can ask questions and we'll answer them. Carry on, Nick.
It's hard. A lot of us understand that it's very hard to move with uncertainty. It just doesn't seem like OCD will unlatch just with moving with uncertainty. Some cases it does, but a lot of chronic cases it doesn't. So
as in the case with yourself and with me.
100%. Somatic OCD, as we've talked about a lot, is one of those particular fears where moving with uncertainty doesn't seem to cut it at all, because you're so convinced that you're gonna notice your sensation forever. And I always tell people the event has little importance in the actual outcome of how you feel, because it's not about agreeing, as you said. It's about, even if I was stuck forever, it wouldn't be comfortable and I wouldn't like it, as you said, but you could still handle it in the majority of your life. You always say this. I've heard you say this 50 times. If I got brought back 30% anxiety right now, it wouldn't affect you at all. You could live the rest of your life. Well,
yeah, it would affect you. You would feel it, but you could still do everything.
You could still do everything you want to do. It's not about, like you said, it's not about liking the scenario. You don't have to like being stuck with OCD. No one's going to say that. We talked about this the other day. But you could still get to a point where you accept that you have OCD And that is a huge part. Moments talked about that. A lot of people just don't accept that they have this disorder. That's a part of the recovery
Huge.
process.
That is one of the most common things we see in the groups. Oh, I don't think I have it. I just don't want it, and I fucking hate it, and this kind of stuff. You know?
Yes, it's part of the whole entire acceptance process. It's not just accepting the one fear that you think is surfaced right now. It's accepting the reality of having OCD, accepting that you might be stuck for more than a little bit longer than you want to be stuck for. Because as you and me both know, how many times do we see stuff, you know, I'll get OCD recovered in 7 days. I think the biggest thing that we've talked about is that people think acceptance really is something you feel. There's no finish line. You don't step over a line and you're like, I have acceptance now. It's many, 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 many tiny moments throughout your recovery process that leads to you thinking and seeing in a rational manner. And in order to get to that place, you have to have a solid understanding of the books. And
Absolutely. Because the robust recovery, it's difficult without those pieces being in place.
yes, because like you said, there's nothing inherently wrong with thoughts or thoughts. A thought is a thought, yes. We do know, and someone's asked this before, you can never know between an OCD thought and a regular thought. That's a
That
dead
answers
end.
one of the last questions there that someone just asked. Yeah.
That's a complete dead end. Oliver did a tremendous video on that, and he literally opened the video by laughing and saying, the answer is you don't know. You can't know. That's part of uncertainty. And the thing is with the books and with thoughts or thoughts, as you said perfectly, when you have a chronically latched fear of saliva, if you have a chronically latched fear of a false memory, thoughts or thoughts does not provide a framework. There's no way to get under it. It's just, you're just, as you said, anxiety will cut through it
An
like
important
butter.
part of the process we have to highlight that we're not trying to get under every thought. We're leaving thoughts there. We're allowing them all to play out. We don't need to do anything with thoughts, the same as any human walking down the street isn't thinking, what do I do with this thought? What do I do with that thought? We're leaving things there. There's no tip or trick in the moment to get rid of it and force it away. So thoughts are thoughts in that sense is a large part of it. But when they're sticky thoughts latched on for years, months, whatever, or moving around the base of a few core fears, we've got to get under that.
Yeah, so let me use the new one that you know I've been working on. I'm going to show people real quick why agreement and why uncertainty didn't work. So as many people know, the fitness industry can be very unhealthy. I still don't accept myself, the possibilities of not having muscle. Now, for over a year, I would take pictures of myself in certain angles to prove to myself, to agree with myself that it was okay to look a certain way. But my OCD would just say to me, well, what if you don't? What if you actually don't look good? This is why unconditional self-acceptance is so important
Yeah,
for
you got
POCD.
under all the OCD fears that got you into a mental health hospital before where you were suicidal. You've got under all of that so that it's not so much a chronic anxiety on a day-to-day basis anymore, but the sort of body dysmorphic disorder related ones that are in relation to how you need to look. They sort of antagonize you a bit, and it's a work in progress with those still.
Yeah, but nothing at the point where I was before. I mean,
No.
I run a business with my wife. I do stuff with you. I live my life entirely on my own terms. The reason why I highlight that is because I tried to move with uncertainty for years and tried to prove to myself and agree for years and got minimal relief. Once I started truly realizing, okay, I'm trying to agree, because agreement just doesn't cut it. We know that. And I'm trying to prove to myself that it is okay, which is agreement, instead of saying to myself, you know what? There are plenty of people out there. We've talked about this. There's plenty of people out there that have never even been to the gym, and they're perfectly happy. Do you know what I mean? It's a belief system, and many people underestimate the power of unconditional self-acceptance.
Of course, hugely underrated, and this is what all our work about is to do with in the OCD community, anxiety community in general, but just for humans in general. It's a life changer. Without it, God, think of all the things we're doing, jumping left, right, and center in all these kinds of problems.
Yeah, and think about the way that people go about their life. They, as you and me both know, he's a character, but Gary Vaynerchuk, he has a couple really good points. He says you buy stuff to impress people that you hate. That is a truly conditional acceptance process.
It's what everyone does.
It's what most people do. Most people wear clothes to impress people. They buy cars. They live their entire life And we're not saying, because then people give us the kickback, right, Rob? They go, well, why don't you just gain 600 pounds and don't be healthy? Understandably so. You could still take care of yourself and you could still wear the clothes you want to wear. You could still drive the car you want to drive. But there's a line. There's a line of conditional and unconditional. And it's a once you get there and once you start to realize how important that is for living a life of just not being stuck in it. Because once you, as you and me both know, when you have conditional acceptance, nothing is ever enough. It's never enough. You always want either more money or want people to have more notoriety. It's just that it's a never ending cycle that people get stuck in.
And it's okay to strive towards these things for the beneficial sort of, as Albert Ellis says, goodies of life that you get from these elements, being fit, being wealthy, or whatever direction you're taking. But it's realizing that if you didn't have it, you can stand it. You are
exactly.
okay. And you can accept yourself even in that situation and be at peace with that.
And
you are intact, just like that. Your value is not based on those elements.
No, and the most important part about that is he talks about this in How to Stubbornly Refuse. I had to read these pages a couple times. He talks about the difference between self-perfection and task perfection. He's like, because you could, like you just said, you can have a perfection in a task, even though perfection is an irrational belief. He does highlight that. But if you just have a task and you fail, and you don't attach that to your identity, this is why you and I, we talk about, you know, people get very caught up on morals and identity values. There's nothing wrong with having morals and identity values. It's when you attach them to your meaning. And then when they go astray, naturally so, your emotions go with it because you've attached yourself. That's really, really, really important to talk about. And it doesn't come easy, like you said, but you know, that's the reality of just trying to see something in a way that, as Albert Ellis says, what did he say? One of my favorite quotes, he goes, adopting this philosophy, I realized the whole world was damn crazy. He was like,
if aliens came down, they'd kill themselves laughing at the things that we think about and do. Nick, just to answer a question, answering one of the questions that someone put in there, it was, what if I was 90% or 100% anxious all the time? Wouldn't that be unbearable?
That's a great question. So as you and I both know, we both, you struggle with physical manifestations of anxiety for years. I only have probably a stint of, you know, whatever it is, a year. But I mean, I opened a business. I went hiking. I did lots of things. As you always, we would say, I was hiking up 3 miles in the sky with sensory motor OCD. Imagine how I felt. You know, you're already hyper aware of your sensations when you can't breathe. I'm already hyper aware. So there was points where I remember playing cornhole at the pool and I was so anxious, I thought I couldn't stand another second, but I still got through it. Those moments are what push you to realize that you can handle
it's not awful where the world ends. All it is a physical anxiety sensation. The universe doesn't end. The world continues. But when things feel awful, it feels 120% bad, which isn't scientifically possible. So it feels like the whole world will explode and it's out of the realms of science, which isn't possible. But that's the sort of trick that the mind plays. And then when we see it more rationally, it brings it down. That's why we get that strong anxious response. Next question. Freedom OCD. Can I have just right OCD about one specific person? He has to behave just right or else it triggers me. Absolutely. OCD can be about anything. There's no set rules that apply to it. No, you can't think anything you can ever imagine it can be, but you're looking for reasons why this may be different or whatever, which is the old way we tend to go because we try and move away from it, or we're scared of it being real. That's why it pulls on that. Let's have a look. Any other questions? How can I tell an OCD thought from a real thought? Well, the answer of that is you can't. Okay, so you can have a rough idea where you think like, okay, I want to jump off this wall or a very high wall or something, and it's going to injure me. Or I don't think I'm not going to do that. I doubt that, and it's unlikely, very unlikely that you're going to do that. Realistically, very, very, very unlikely. But you can't have 100% certainty, because as Voltaire says, that's absurd. There is no absolute certainty in the universe. So we have to acknowledge, maybe I could jump, and maybe that could lead to a very serious injury. That could happen. And accepting that worst case scenario, remember, that doesn't mean agreeing, because often they're not going to always unlatch with just sort of being, you're not going to be able to tell yourself that's OCD. We think that, and that's a sort of common myth about OCD, that you can just keep telling yourself that's OCD, that's an OCD thought, but then that becomes an internal compulsion as we're trying to avoid the OCD thing, and so on. So that's a key part. We've done videos on the YouTube channel about that, how to tell OCD thoughts apart. I think it's Oliver who did one of those. So if you go over there on the YouTube channel and check that out, you'll find a lot of stuff on that. Let's have a little look at some other questions. For Nick, Mary, how can I stop my brain for looking for things to worry about?
Well, that's a great question. So the answer is there's no way to do it. And that's part of the acceptance process. When you're chronically suffering, I just was having a conversation with someone in the Facebook group today about this. They asked me something along the lines of, how do I stop searching for things? Well, you're heightened right now. You're in a chronic cycle. Your brain's going to latch on to all different things. One of the biggest things that holds people back in recovery that I've noticed is they give engagement to every thought. Every new day, right, you see someone, they'll say something like, oh, I had this thought last night in bed. I had this thought this last morning. Rob, you said it perfectly. When you anxiety, you almost had different symptoms every single day. You know, and I was the same way. So your brain is going to look for different things.
Yeah, and also people write off other symptoms they have in life. Like right now, my eye is itching, right? That's probably because I've been in a pool with quite a bit of chlorine. Now, I'm not thinking, oh my God, I can't stand it. Oh my God, what is this? You're just accepting it for what it is, right? But when you've got OCD, it's like, oh my God, what if this is wrong? Oh my God, what is this anxiety symptom? Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
Yes, you really start to catastrophize on every little thing and forget that the OCD process itself takes, your brain's going to latch on to anything. Any single thing it can latch onto, it's going to latch onto. That's a huge part of the recovery process. I have not talked to one person in our community that had a straightforward shot in recovery. It just doesn't work like that. We wish it did. So, but it doesn't, unfortunately.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely. Let's have a look here.
Brianna just made a really good point.
What was it?
It says, when it tries to latch to anything and everything, that's the perfect opportunity to go about your day and wear anxiety like an uncomfortable coat. Embrace the anxiety and whatever emotion comes.
Very good. Very good. Very good point there from Brianna. There's a question there by someone who was saying that they've got anxiety relating to being short. And they said, do they learn to just accept themselves and their height? And the answer is yes. And Nick will explain why.
Yeah, because as I did in the video yesterday talking about the body fears and stuff like that, there's always going to be something your brain can latch on to. You can accept anything about yourself in any way you look. It takes time to see that and adopt that, but it is something you can do. You can definitely work on that. You don't have to like it. You don't have to like myself, okay? This is just the reality of my life. I genetically have a larger structure in my midsection. I don't particularly like that, nor does it really bother me anymore. That's not what can you do about it? Nothing. So you only have one move. Your move is acceptance. That's the only move you have, because you can't prove to yourself that other people are happy when they're short. Yes, that's true. People are happy that they're short. But because we have OCD, it's very easy for it to latch on to the what ifs. What if I can't accept it? What if I'm shorter than other people? You can accept yourself with anything. A nose, crooked nose, 6 toes, 1 eye.
Yeah, you've done very well accepting your 6 toes, and that took a lot of work, but you've got there, you know.
That's hilarious.
Brianna just said there, yes, it's like eating peaches that you don't like, but you still eat them. The discomfort of eating a food that you don't like anymore. Things like that. It's like wearing it like an uncomfortable coat. Wearing the anxiety is an uncomfortable sensation, and so on and so on and so on and so on. These are key points by the likes of Claire Weeks or Paul David on our reading list, where they talk about, Paul David talks about wearing anxiety symptoms like an uncomfortable coat, and so does Claire Weeks, who's one of the anxiety pioneers, but both of them go into great detail all about not trying to force away anxiety symptoms, learning to ride with them whatever they are, learning to leave them there, not trying to fight them off, internally resist them, battle them away, everything that we do naturally because we don't like anxiety symptoms. This is only going to be a short Instagram live, and I'm really glad that Nick came on here last moment to cover some of these questions, and we'll be back on
Rob,
here.
Do you mind if we answer one more question? Like, I want to
Yes.
answer it.
Yes, absolutely.
So, Mary, you asked about medication. So that's a really good question that Rob has talked about. Medications help save people all the time. They take the edge off of everything. Neither Rob or I are anti-medication by any means. Rob has seen medications do wonders for people. As Rob said, medication probably could have helped him during my journey. It probably could have helped me a little bit too. I'm not anti, or I'm indifferent. If it came to a point where, say, Rob, you were like, hey, look, I think it might be time for you to hop on medication, that would be something I would just do.
Yeah, you discuss it with your doctor. You discuss it with your doctor and make the necessary steps.
Absolutely, but we do highlight that we've never. Rob has might seen a couple, but I haven't met too many people who have come to a full unconditional self-life and other acceptance by medication alone. So it is important to highlight that.
Medication, you can work on all your thinking when you're on medication. Makes no difference. It just takes the edge off. You can do that. But what he's saying is that medication doesn't sort of fix your thinking. It's just a chemical thing that changes how you feel and reducing the OCD sort of flare up, but your thinking has to come from what you're learning, reading, and so on. It doesn't change acceptance for you in your mind. It doesn't do that, but it helps things sort of flow better and feel better and eases it in, but not in the sense of like teaching you the tools by taking a tablet. We're certainly not at that point yet with society's future medication treatments and technology. I think that covers most of the things. I only wanted to come on here and do a quick live, and I'm really glad that Nick came on here. We'll be back on here, me and Nick, covering a lot more questions in the next few days. We'll come on here for an hour, sit down, go through loads of questions or specific topic, because we love to come on here and do these. And I'm very glad that Nick came on last minute when he was like sunbathing in the garden, and then suddenly he got invited into an Instagram live and had to put a shirt on. But that is what I appreciate, this dedication that we get here from these people that come on the YouTube channel. So this is
we got the friends here too.
Oh, look, very nice.
They're loving their life. That's what they do all day.
We see these always in the YouTube channel, digging holes in your garden.
Exactly.
Nick, thank you very much. And any questions that you want to ask in relation to OCD, you can always just DM us here on OCD Recovery UK on the Instagram channel, and we will cover those on the next YouTube videos or on here on the next Instagram Live. Nick, awesome. Thank you very much.
No problem. See you later, guys.
See you later. Bye.